What up? What up? Hey, Chad. What's up, everybody?
How's it going, Kyle? You ever, you and I have both been working on this project for a long time. You ever look at the product and just say, "I'm bored"?
Not yet. I
Uh,
probably wouldn't be clicking the start space button if I thought that.
yeah, probably not. Probably not. And we hit that
There
button,
wouldn't be that much to
once a
talk
week
about.
or every other week or something
You,
like
you know what
this.
we'd be talking about? We'd be talking about like interest rates, like like Bitcoiners do.
Yeah, we'd be talking about fucking nonsense, probably.
Instead, we get to just riff on all the cool shit happening here, dude. We just burned 60 million rune today. Congrats.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's exciting. People responded that obviously Rune's price is up today a significant amount, so I think people responded well to that. And then on top of that, we're going to be getting a bunch of buy and burn of Rune over the next month, 2 months, whatever the hell the number is going to be. I think even right now, I think we've from the lending being open, like we've already like done millions of dollars of buy and burn pressure. I think a couple million.
Yeah, it's only been open for like what 3, 4 hours or something, probably
Yeah,
less than that.
and all those loans are still happening. Like it takes, depending on the size of your loan, but like it can take like an hour for the Rune to be bought, and then another hour or so for like the receiving asset to be sent. So that stuff takes more than an hour, and oftentimes for those larger loans.
Yeah, so it opened up at like prices right now. I think that's 125 million in lending collateral that just opened up.
Yeah, dude.
That's big.
And then if you add that, if you that's just like in today's Rune price, right? So if Rune's price pumps some more, obviously that means more coming in, right? So it's just the self-feeding monster in some ways.
Yeah, 100%. I worked with Orion a little bit on making the dashboard a little bit cleaner, and that's something that definitely is key to work on, just like metrics around lending to see just like what the effects are and like what the current liability is and like how much rune is burned, how much the liability is if current loans are redeemed. Uh, so there's a lot to think about
For
with
sure.
this. A lot like I feel like a lot of people have been very focused on just like the current liability, but just like the current liability is just like a small piece of lending. I feel because even if people close loans and that particular loan is net inflationary, that opens up more room for someone else to come and open up another one. So like I think just having more optics around lending like as a whole rather than just the individual loans is an important piece of it because some of those metrics only capture like current liability open
Right.
loans, which is only half the picture.
Right.
So Pluto.
Yo, what's up, guys?
How's it going?
Going good. Going good. Exciting day today.
Oh, for sure. I think the next 30 days is going to be fun to watch for sure. Any guesstimates of how long before we hit the caps again?
Ooh, it depends how crazy things get. I feel like who knows? Like Bitcoin could absolutely just pop off, and then there's just a huge amount of demand, or maybe things just taper off, and we see like a couple months that are like a little slower. Like who really knows? I think it could be anywhere between just like 2 and 3 months, and I don't know, maybe midsummer, maybe end of summer.
Okay.
I think before the end of this year for
I
sure.
mean,
With
I'd be surprised if
125 million
if
in
it took
caps.
more than 3 months. I'd be surprised. But then again, it can be like there are a lot of things that are pushing and pulling this thing, right? So like Bitcoin's price pumping relative to Rune will close the gap toward push us towards the
Right.
cap, and then Rune's price outperforming Bitcoin will push us away from the cap. So that's going to play like a significant role to how fast the caps are hit, obviously.
Yeah, my hot take was going to basically be hopefully never. So if like the flywheel continues to work, if people continue saving, we continue driving volume through integrations, if we ship things like the instant swaps, which would give UIs the ability to bond a node essentially to essentially apply swapper clout to their users swaps. We can talk a little bit more about that proposal in a bit,
Yeah,
but ideally, things just keep trending in the right direction. I think right now we're on pace. If we continue at the rate that we're going to smash the monthly volume record by a couple billion. So yeah, I mean, if things all keep going in the right direction, if demand, um, I'm assuming demand is always going to outpace supply. So my prediction is probably wrong. I wouldn't even call it a prediction. I'm just saying that optimally, there's just an equilibrium of savers, lenders, and the flywheel of volume to TVL keeps continuing, and we basically never hit the caps. That would be ideal. I don't know if
that
that's going
would
to
be
actually
ideal. Yeah,
happen.
I doubt that will happen, but it's possible for sure. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I doubt it
As you
too.
as
It's
you
too good of a product. There's going to be too much demand.
this means a great product. It's a fucking gorgeous product, and it's just if people were aware of this thing, the caps would be hit in like 3 days. Do you know what I mean? Like if the industry as a whole was aware of this and was down, then we would fill the caps incredibly fast.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting. So, how much Rune is in the pools right now? 35 million Rune, and we just opened up 20 million Rune value for collateral.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like most of what's in the pools right now is like open for to be bought and burned off the market, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting is I was just looking at the volume for today. I think we have about 5 hours left in the day, and we need another 100 million in trade volume to get a new all-time high in 24-hour trade volume.
We just broke the all-time high 2 days ago too.
Yeah, I know. I think lending might push us here. Like it's going to help. Like people opening up these large loans and swap it for both the collateral and the debt is all just going to create a lot of volume just from that, and that's going to help us get there potentially. But it's going to be close, I think.
Yeah, new all time high, 4/10 of a billion. And what's crazy is that like just like looking into some dashboards the other day, I was looking at how many like swappers the network actually has, and yeah, this kind of volume is achieved with such a low number of swappers. I think I saw 12,000 weekly swappers. Like, how much more room for growth could there possibly be if we're doing almost half a billion a day with 12,000 weekly swappers? It's very much conceivable that there's 12,000 swappers per day, never mind per week. And I think there's growth for way more than that, just based on how big the market and demand is for this kind of product. Lending, swap savers, like everything in general.
Right. It's kind of hard to we do so well on the fundamental side of things, right? Like this, you just look at the sheer numbers of like volume and like unique swappers and like all these things. Like we do so well on the fundamentals of everything. It's hard to imagine many other projects in the space who can compete with us on the fundamentals.
Yeah, for sure.
Just renaming the space to 60 million Rune burned.
Oh, nice.
There we go.
Should we talk
Well,
about state of play and what's coming up next?
you should probably hit upon 128.1, which I'll let you take the lead on that one.
Yeah, that was an unexpected speed bump in this week's rollout. So 128 was just adopted, but with 128, I accidentally introduced a bug in preparation for the BNB Beacon Chain Ragnarok, which is going to probably take place sometime in the next week or two. For all of those catching up, BNB Beacon Chain is being sunset by the BNB Chain team. This is not the Binance Smart Chain. So if your address starts in 0x, you don't need to do anything. This is the legacy BNB like beacon chain that was around from like 4 years ago. Basically, there's no activity on that chain anymore. Almost everything has migrated over to Binance Smart Chain, now known as the colloquial like B or the canonical BNB chain. So basically, anyone who has any LP positions. So sorry, just to back up, Binance has announced that they're going to be sunsetting that chain completely in April of this year. So we decided to get ahead of the curve and basically start the process of Ragnaroking those pools from THORChain, which basically means that at a certain point, we start by saying, okay, everyone withdraw your LPs because this chain is going away. So withdraw your LP, get your your BNB back, and then you can bridge that over to Binance Smart Chain, and then get your Rune back. And hopefully, everyone is just going to like pool on the Binance Smart Chain pools on THORChain. Basically, like the next step after we've given people over a month notice now, and we've encouraged UIs to give people basically give them the heads up that they should withdraw from those legacy BNB pools. And so now that that 1 month expiry has passed, we're going to essentially start the process to essentially what Ragnarok is we're just returning everyone's LPs to them, to the addresses that they sent them into. This is something that we've done before previously when assets get delisted or when chains get shut down. So it's a normal procedure, but yeah, the BNB beacon chain is going away. And the everyone is encouraged to obviously move their LPs and savings over to the BNB on Binance Smart Chain, which is the new that's the chain that Binance wants everyone to use. So I think we always knew that there was going to come a day when the Binance Beacon Chain was going to be sunset, and that's actually why we got ahead of that with the kill switch of the BNB rune. It's just because like that chain like offers no real value. It was just the original chain that like the Rune token was launched on. That was what in the old days of like BEP swap, it was all just BNB beacon chain. So it's a little bit bittersweet. Like BNB beacon chain was really the genesis of THORChain. It was the first before THORChain was even a multi-chain DEX. It was actually a Binance beacon chain DEX, which is kind of crazy to think about. So it really is the end of an era, but the new focus for the BNB asset is on Binance Smart Chain, which is superior in many ways. So I'm glad that we are supporting Binance Smart Chain, that we added that like six to 9 months ago. I forgot even when. So everyone who is providing liquidity on the Binance Beacon Chain today is encouraged to go provide liquidity on the Binance Smart Chain pool on THORChain. So yeah, that's just like an operational thing.
What's kind of funny is that when THORChain was like first starting to be worked on, when like the first lines of code were committed by myself and Lena, at that time I had like no money. I was basically dead broke. And I got like 2 jobs building 2 different blockchains. One was THORChain, one was for another project. But neither one of those projects could pay me any money because neither one had any money at that time. So then I got a 3rd job building for the Binance Beacon Chain. And I built out like the ability to do like escrow and hedge escrow and like multi-sig stuff for Binance Beacon Chain all those years ago. And it's just kind of funny to fast forward to now. That one's done.
Yeah, it's crazy actually. I mean, it kind of started out this call like there's a lot more important and fun things to talk about than operational stuff like sunsetting the BNB Beacon Chain. But I think it's a good opportunity to really take a step back and look at how far this network has come, and really see that THORChain is staying ahead of the curve. It's a monumental moment. But yeah, it's been, I mean, how long has this project even been going on for now? Like almost 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's really 5 years in the making. So yeah, it's the end of an era and the start of a new one.
Another thing that most people don't know about BNB Beacon chain is that it's actually a Cosmos chain. And it was probably one of the first Cosmos chains. It like launched before Cosmos SDK even really launched itself. It was already like, I think at the time, like 6 months old, or when we first started messing with it ourselves on THORChain. And so it actually is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Cosmos chain in existence. And it is one of the very few Cosmos chains in existence that has a larger market cap than Rune. So when BNB Beacon Chain dies in the next, whatever time frame it is, I think THORChain would become the number one, or maybe number two, maybe three. I think maybe like,
No, I think number
is it
four
number four?
actually.
I think it's Crypto.com, Atom,
Yeah,
the Cosmos Hub. What's the third one missing?
Celestia, I believe.
Celestia? That's a Cosmos chain? I thought it wasn't. Oh,
Yes, it's pretty new. It just launched a couple
yeah.
months ago. Like it was it's like a really new chain.
It still is pretty like, I mean, we all have to kind of like pat ourselves on the back as a community, because just even to achieve the goal of being one of the biggest and most valuable Cosmos chains in existence is pretty remarkable.
And the only Cosmos chain where people are actually doing anything on.
Quiet, you. Quiet.
But yeah, dude, that's really cool. I think most people just didn't know that about BNB chain because no one actually does anything with the original BNB chain. Everyone just assumes that BSC. Like so many people we've talked to that were like, oh yeah, we have BNB. This is before we had BSC, and it was like, oh yeah, we have a Binance chain, and it's like, oh no, not that one, the other one, the one that there's nothing on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I'm
definitely was
glad that it's
confusing.
going away. I'm glad it's going away. It's going to
Yeah,
cause less confusion for people. People often like think that they're swapping, especially in like multi-chain wallets. They just like get like BNB and they're like, wait, what? This is the wrong chain. So it's good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
good. It's going away.
Yeah, and BSC is probably the better chain out of two of them. Like just the fact that you have the ability to have smart contracts and such just makes it a more useful chain than what BNB Beacon was.
Yeah.
yeah. Also, in the next version, I think we should have the extra BSC pools whitelisted, so you can so people can like move their LPs from BTCB and like wrapped ETH, Binance wrapped ETH. Like if you look at some major dexes like PancakeSwap and Thena and like really the big dexes on Binance Smart Chain, 90% of their volume is like four assets, and that's BNB, that's USDT, USDC, and then there's Binance wrapped Bitcoin and Binance wrapped ETH. So I think having migrating those pools over to the smart chain just good for our liquidity. It's going to be pretty good for volume. I think people doing arbing on that and just making trades because it's really only available on a couple dexes right now. But we have native, so it's gonna be a pretty big offering to just it's the same thing as just wrap it Bitcoin to Bitcoin. You just go Binance peg Bitcoin to native, be pretty sweet.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, basically starting like next week, we're gonna basically start to get rid of the Binance Beacon chain pools on THORChain. So again, everyone's encouraged to withdraw now if you have any LPs
Or
on
savers.
or savers. Yep, definitely withdraw those now, and then if you want, redeposit them on Binance Smart Chain in their respective pools. Yeah, and then for version 129, so in version 128, we were supposed to be releasing the trade accounts feature, but some last minute testing by another dev, actually an independent dev, found some issues that would prevent us from moving forward with the rollout of trade accounts in the version that was most recently adopted this week. So rather than wait, like another month for version 129, which was supposed to include things like memoless transaction, which is going to be another big key feature. We basically just decided to fast follow with some of those fixes to be able to get trade accounts out, hopefully like in a week and a half to 2 weeks from now. So that's the next big thing that's coming is trade accounts. We were hoping to have that live probably like today, but unfortunately there's some issues that are requiring us to hold it back for another couple of weeks. We can talk about trade accounts briefly, but it doesn't really impact most people here.
Right.
So maybe we just, we don't need to discuss that. It's mostly just for arbitrage bots, but what it unlocks is the ability to do order books. So maybe Chad, if you want to talk a little bit about it's basically just a primitive that we can build on top of. But if you want to talk about order books, um, that would be that's another order books and Memolist, I think, are the two big features coming up that will improve developer experience and execution quality price. Basically, just lead to better execution on THORChain.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about Memlist and order books. I think they're both going to like add a lot of value to the protocol. I think like for this space, I think we should probably focus on lending mostly, and then save order book conversation for another one, just because you only have so much time, and I want to stay focused on what's happening in the day rather than what's going to be happening next month or 2 months from now, whatever the number is going to be. But I'm curious, like Pluto, your viewpoint on. We were talking recently in Discord about expanding lending to support other assets, right? Like BNB or AVAX or something, whatever it is. How do you feel about that today? Because I know you and I had a conversation about this a while back, like a year ago, and you had a viewpoint back then. I'm curious if your viewpoint is the same or has changed or what.
I mean, like a year ago, we basically decided only launch lending with Bitcoin and ETH because those were the least likely, in our view, at that time, to move quickly against RUNE, which would have impacts for the loan closure scenarios. So like that obviously got proven wrong. Like that core assumption got proven wrong by the fact that Bitcoin just had an epic run or is in the midst of having an epic run against nearly every other asset. So even just like that core assumption was challenged.
Yeah.
But I think it could be a lot worse. Like if we enabled Doge for, I mean, not worse in the sense that like there's anything wrong with it. But basically, it's much more likely, in my view, still that an asset like Doge does like 100, 200, 300% gains on RUNE just because, markets are, um, just dumb. Like,
More
meme,
volatile, yeah.
yeah, like meme coins are going to have a moment, DeFi coins are going to have a moment. Like, the more likely it is for some, token to have like a completely unhinged run, the more risky it is for the protocol if we're lending or if we're accepting those assets as collateral. So I still think that like adding something like Doge would not be a good idea, but adding something like BNB, AVAX, adding those L1s. But I think it's important. I mean, I don't know. I think the reason why Bitcoin is such a game changer for lending is because like there is no real like programmable Bitcoin DeFi projects. I know there's a lot of people working on it and ordinals or whatever the heck like they're working on in the Bitcoin land. But
Mhm.
realistically, THORChain is the only project that's bringing real DeFi to Bitcoin right now. People are probably happy to challenge that. Please tweet me. Please subtweet me. Please tell me that I'm wrong. But like
Yeah, I think
it's yeah.
Babylon is one example of people trying to build like layer twos for Bitcoin that allow you to
Yeah.
stake your Bitcoin and do this and that, the other thing. But I think I generally agree with your viewpoint though on the stake of
Yeah.
DeFi on Bitcoin.
Yeah. So for Bitcoin, it really is like 0 to 1. Um, but for like for ETH and like AVAX and BSC, there's lending platforms on those on the there's lending products on those chains as well. They don't offer as good of terms as THORChain's lending, but
Yeah.
there's just there's competition there, right? So it's like I'm curious to see when if and when we do hit the caps, what the actual composition of loans on THORChain are. If it's 70% Bitcoin, because right now we're seeing you know naturally because it's such a attractive product, we're seeing demand for both Bitcoin and Ethereum loans. So
Yeah.
it's like if we could add them, we could add other L1s, but like if we're going to hit the caps anyway, and the product is creating a tremendous amount of value and continuing to bolster our position as like the number one Bitcoin DeFi project in the space, why take any steam out of that ship? Like why, I think it just makes, I think if we reach the same end and there's a possibility that it's less risky because those token, like, Bitcoin and Ethereum are considered more like blue chip, why
Yeah.
would we, why would we add Doge as a collateral asset?
Well, I think my argument is this, and people are welcome to disagree with me, but I actually consider a Doge to be less risky for the protocol than Bitcoin is. And the reason why I say that is because, um, and I said something similar to you, a year ago, and I think I've been semi-verified thus far, although it is early to claim any wins or whatever. Is that in the event that the collateral asset pumps a lot, and we just saw this with Bitcoin recently, that there's most people aren't going to do anything. They're just going to ride it, right? So if somebody does anything, they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to close their loan and sell their Bitcoin because they want to take profits. Some people will certainly do this. But the vast majority of people will say, hey, my Bitcoin is just increased by 50% or 100%, whatever. And if I close my loan and reopen it, reutilizing the same collateral, then I'm going to have twice the amount of debt, right? So it's like I get more money, kind of like a free money scenario. And I think most people will be doing that. And by doing so, you've increased your debt position relative to the collateral, which means when Doge dumps, which whenever it pumps, it inevitably dumps as well, probably close to like 80% of those loans will be unclosable at that point, and they pose very little risk to the profile to the protocol at that point. Bitcoin, on the other hand, though, it did a 3x down from where it was at its all-time highs in the last bull market to the bear, which is relatively very, very like not a huge movement to relative to history. And it stands to reason that that will continue in the next bear market, that Bitcoin will go down in the next bear market. It'll probably be, maybe 50% down, right? Rather than being a 3x down or whatever. Like it'll be significantly less than it was the last bear market. So 200% CR or 50% LTVs are going to be, more of them are going to be open and available to be closed in a bear market than Doge would be, because Doge is going to have a much further downward angle in a bear market, right? So I mean, we can improve this for us by changing the LTV to be like 6-7%, which I kind of hope we do that at some point in the future. But I really think that that Doge as an asset will probably be more valuable to the protocol and less risky to the protocol than how you're feeling about things. And I think we've seen that so far. And obviously, we need to collect more data over the next 6 months or whatever to kind of see what the behavior is. But even thus far, we've seen Bitcoin pump relative to RUNE. We really didn't see that much activity in terms of like loans being closed or whatever.
Yeah. I just don't like meme coins.
It's not about
Just
it's
like,
not about what coins you like. I don't like meme coins either, but I'm only thinking about which one provides. By doing so, do we provide more value to the protocol? And the answer inevitably is certainly, right? More loans will be opened. We become valuable to the Doge community, more valuable to the Doge community, which means they're going to be more engaged on swaps and everything else, because they see us as a contributing.
Oh, also what you were saying earlier, Pluto, just about just adding the unique value to Bitcoin. We could also do that with Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Doge, Atom, like none of which have any kind of native smart contracting capabilities. I guess maybe Atom, if you consider like as an IBC asset, but like there's plenty of other UTXOs that we support that we could add functionality to. Although we should probably I think we would need to change the cap method, because otherwise those would be taking away space from Bitcoin loans, maybe to something else, some other kind of method to determine how much space is left for each asset. But we would
I
by
guess,
adding more assets, it would just add more functionality to all of all those
Right.
communities.
yeah, I guess the part where I would disagree with on this one with Chad is, you say like, oh, it's not our job to pick like what assets that we like. But I think like as risk managers, and maybe that's not our job to be risk managers, but like THORChain lending inherently has risks to the protocol. I think we can all agree on that. And we've done all the work that we have with like the lending lever, essentially defining risk parameters with block science, etc. So like we know that we are, whether we like it, in the business of controlling risk for the protocol, and part of that means only accepting collateral assets that don't have a high likelihood of running against RUNE. And it's impossible for any of us to forecast that. But if one person, if Elon Musk decided to like wake up and tweet like, "Oh, we're adding Doge payments," like it would do a 2000x or something. Something ridiculous, right? Like, and that would, people would who had to open Doge loans would absolutely close them to sell. Like, and we would. So it's like that to me, it's like an unacceptable risk for the protocol. Again, maybe that's not our position. Like maybe we want to be agnostic, but when you add a feature that has a degree of price risk on collateral assets, we have to then become managers of risk. And so that's kind of, why my position would be to just keep it to Bitcoin and ETH for now, because those two are blue chips. They're number one and number two. They're not likely to move from those spots.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I just don't think people would close their loans and sell their Doge in that hypothetical you use it. I mean, some people will definitely do it, of course, but the majority of people will probably do nothing at all. And the ones that do act, a majority of those who do act will probably just take the free debt, right? Because Doge is going to go up further. Because everybody always thinks that it'll go. It's like nobody takes profits in this industry. It's a very small amount of people who take profits in this industry in general.
Yeah, my consideration would be like, let's see out the lending feature through a bull and a bear market before we decide to change the collateral assets. I think it's something that we can afford to be relatively conservative on.
I mean, I would like us to do at least one more collateral asset that's a lower market cap, just so we can collect the information. And something like a Doge wouldn't be that risky, just because the depth of that pool is very small relative to Bitcoin and ETH, so the amount of liability is relatively low because it wouldn't allow that much in terms of loans. But at least we would collect the information, the data, to either confirm or not confirm, your point or my point. Do you know what I mean? Like collect the information to learn rather than make an assumption that I'm correct or you're correct.
Yeah, for sure. We can look at it soon.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin, guys.
What's next for? I was gonna say Litecoin, but yeah, I like. And again, it's not about what you like, but I like Litecoin. I like Bitcoin Cash. There's some chads who like routinely do like really big swaps to Litecoin. It's actually a pretty active route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the biggest active routes on Trust Wallet is actually this is true. This is Litecoin to Doge and vice versa. Never would have guessed that. So it's like a top 10 route for them.
Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah, what else is there?
I would look at whatever is the lowest, the most shallow layer one pool we have, and then probably use that one. That's probably going to be also the lowest market cap L1 that we have on the network, and that's going to be like the best way to confirm or whatever.
That's Adam.
Is it Adam? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
By a good margin.
Really, Adam's is the smallest by market cap or by pool size?
By depth.
Yeah, by depth. Okay. Yeah, that's not a bad one. But that one's like.
I think it's the smallest by market cap too. Actually, maybe Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash have been below them. I haven't really kept track.
I think Adam's like 30th or 35th largest token, something like this. Yeah, and there's a lot of people in the Atom community that we're connected with, so that would be a better test than Litecoin or Doge, because those people aren't as engaged. I feel like, no, not as engaged, but just more isolated. The Atom people are kind of like, there's more overlap with our community, with the Atom community, I would say. I don't know. I'm open to exploring and trying it and see what happens. especially with small caps, like matters less at that point. It's just good to collect information so we can make educated and informed decisions about the future of this protocol.
Definitely. Shout out to Shapeshift. I see Shapeshift in the audience. It's a place that you can go to open loans. They're one of three UIs that support it. You guys are awesome. You guys have been a OG THORChain supporter. So go check out Shapeshift. Open some loans over there. Not financial advice.
For sure, dude. Saw a bunch of the Shapeshift guys at ETH Denver and had a great time as always. Saw a bunch of THORChans there actually. Patriot was there. Eridonis was there from the Nine Realms team. Let's see, Fox McLeod I think is still probably here in the audience. Yeah, and Rex0x is probably listening to this recording right now. What's up? What's up?
Do you want to
Good to
talk
see
about
the THORChans
ETH
coming out.
Denver a little bit? Obviously, you can't talk about specific conversations with specific projects or whatever. But do you want to like kind of give like kind of your overview of your feeling of ETH Denver and THORChain?
Yeah, I mean, dude, ETH Denver is just such a great place as like a US based person to go to meet other people in the industry, especially like builders and different protocols and wallets and aggregators and pretty much everyone under the sun is there. And it was kind of was surprising to me how not Ethereum ETH Denver is like at the actual conference itself, which I only went to for like an hour maybe, mostly just like outside in the town meeting people, but it's a terrible spot for the venue, by the way. It's like nowhere close to anything. But the actual like hall, there's like Near is like sponsoring like a bunch of Polkadot booth. Like it's so not just Ethereum focused, which I like actually. It's like it's very open, I would say. And a lot of people talking about Bitcoin. So obviously there's a ton of interest in Bitcoin swaps and the other kind of full DeFi stack that we offer. So it was great just meeting like big builders in the space and talking about THORChain. And there's like a ton of people out there who just love THORChain and just really like everything that we're doing with Bitcoin because we really are the first people that really built that were like doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on building on Bitcoin when no one else was for a number of years now. It's kind of coming back and it's definitely paying off seeing how much like social capital we have in the broader space.
Yeah, I definitely noticed.
Really cool meeting all the teams.
I definitely noticed that as well. Like when I've gone to conferences in the past, like in the years before, and just meet random people or like whatever, and like I tell them I'm working on THORChain, and a lot of the time they had like no idea. Oh, what's THORChain? Like, what does that do? Right? Like they just never heard of it. In this particular like Denver, for whatever reasons, and you could argue it's about streaming swaps or just the the success of the chain or and all the media we've gotten over the last few months, but like more people understood what THORChain was, were more excited to meet me when they did meet me, right? Or just the other members of the team. This seemed like we were just as a project, we were just more in the consciousness of the community of ETH Denver than we've ever been in the past.
Yeah, 100%. And people are like actually paying attention to Bitcoin, so they're actively thinking about like Bitcoin liquidity and the kind of full stack of things that we do on top of Bitcoin. So it's like it's a very good spot to be in where we are. I feel like it was just so busy because it's just meeting just so many people because so many people are interested in like interacting with Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. Pluto, do you want to talk about Insta swaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely love that feature. I'll it's very rare that like someone proposes a feature in in the developer Discord and like immediately everyone is just on board with it.
Yeah.
That's how you can tell it's that's how you can tell it's a feature. You good, bro?
Yeah, I'm just coughing my ass up. No, you're right. That is very rare. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, and this is one of those examples of things where it's like clear, obvious value add for THORChain and for its holders and for its stakeholders and UIs. Like, I think Insta Swaps is a no-brainer. And so basically the concept there is that UIs will be essentially given the opportunity to buy enough rune to run a node, which at this at this point in time is more or less 1 million runes. So that would they would buy enough rune, they would run a node, and then they would essentially bond the rune that's in their node towards an affiliate Thor name. And when people make swaps against that Thor name, and I think we have to actually take a step back and explain the swapper clout feature first. And also, God damn it, every time we talk about this stuff, there's so many layers of it, right? It's like we have to talk about the outbound delays as well. So right now, as a security feature for THORChain, and to basically give the community and node operators time to react if there's anything suspicious, any suspicious transactions, there's a throttle applied that's based on the amount of rune that's flying through the system at any given time, or any assets priced in rune. And when that exceeds a certain amount, which also is the amount of our bounty, basically the goal of that is to make it so that anyone who would want to basically manipulate or in any other way exploit THORChain, they would be more incentivized to just like submit a bounty, because up to that certain cap, there is not basically after that point, which is like around 300,000 rune, we start throttling the outbound transactions. So there's this whole like security mechanism that we put in place. It includes things like confirmation counting, the outbound delay, solvency checking, which is basically constantly checking on-chain versus external chain fault amounts. We can maybe someone can drop a link to like the comprehensive blog post about THORChain security features. But basically, this is for a long time until Swapper Clout, which was enabled I think in 127, the last version. But up until that point, like a lot of users would complain about having to wait an hour. Like why does it take an hour to receive my tokens when I do a swap on THORChain? And the short answer is for security reasons. And so what Swapper Cloud does is it basically says that anybody who spends a certain amount of rune in basically the amount of fees that you pay when swapping from a specific address, that's tracked, and that's essentially accrued to your address as clout. And so when you make a swap, if you basically have a certain amount of clout in your address, you've done millions of dollars of swaps already, or even tens of thousands, you can skip the outbound delay and essentially spend that clout temporarily to expedite your swap. And so we've seen that. I don't know, Chad, do you have the statistics on how much that has like sped up transactions on average?
Yeah, I mean, last time I looked, it was like 90x improvement.
Yeah. But then we still end up having, days like today or like in the, many days like this, right, in the last week, when there's, a ton of value that's in the scheduled outbound queue because there's just simply so much, volume going through THORChain. So really like security is like, obviously the number one concern of THORChain developers and of node operators. So like, it's also one of the things that hampers our the ability to scale the most. And of course, we also strive for the best possible user experience for swappers. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's like, do you just abandon your security measure because it's inconvenient for swappers, or do you make people wait an hour? And so we're basically doing everything we can to try to keep the security measure in place as long as possible. I think someday, once the protocol becomes like fully ossified and we stop shipping so many features, like we could potentially look at like relaxing or even eliminating some of those security features altogether. But for the meantime, we want to have this outbound delay where then we add things like Swapper Clout to be able to alleviate that for certain users. So now with the InstaSwap feature that was proposed, it's essentially allowing a UI to bond in a node and then apply that bond to the Swapper Clout for all of their affiliate swaps. So, for example, if you are THORSwap and you are running a node on THORChain already, you can essentially just have all the, you can basically like pre-apply a clout to all your users that swap through your affiliate address, or sorry, through your affiliate code, and they'll essentially be able to bypass the outbound queue. And so we think that for UIs, especially like the big tier one UIs like and wallets, they really care about the swapper experience. So they're some major wallets have already signaled to us that they're willing to more or less buy market Rune buy 1 million or more Rune to run one or more nodes, to essentially be able to allow their users that swap through their wallet to bypass the outbound queue. And the reason why that works is that if one of those users did end up being like an attack transaction, that would basically slash the bond of that affiliate's node. So they are taking on a risk, but in return, they're able to allow their users to bypass the outbound queue, which will then create a competition amongst UIs, because why would you use a UI that has a 1 hour delay when you could get your funds instantly? So I'm super bullish on that feature because I think it will drive a lot of organic demand for Rune, and we'll see a bunch of it'll be like once one wallet has it, every wallet who has THORChain integrated are going to want to have it. And I think that's going to just, it's going to lead to a more decentralized system. And honestly, just like it's really, really good for THORChain if there are a lot of organizations, and powerful organizations that have a lot of users, that have a lot of, clout in the industry. We want them to be running nodes on THORChain. So I think all around, for many reasons, like this feature could be a game changer, because it really just it's going to drive demand for Rune, increase the the throughput of the network, and it's gonna result in a better experience for customers.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice if those operators, like take THORSwap for example, they could allocate a specific amount of Rune from their bond for this particular feature, so they can kind of like limit their exposure if they choose to. They could apply the whole thing if they wanted to go full balls out. But if they just wanted to, like, we'll give you like 100,000 Rune, not like the full 1 million, and then we'll probably get 80% of the way there. Right. So having that flexibility will just make people like THORSwap more comfortable with it, because you can put less of your capital at risk, but also provide a significant value for your users. And then the other component of which we've been kind of talking about and exploring the idea of is actually allowing zero conf swaps with this as well, which also I think is possible. There's some things to be considered, some security things to be considered of, and I actually want to have a deeper conversation with the THORSec team about this topic as well, get their viewpoint and input to this as well. But theoretically speaking, as long as you keep the zero conf total value to be low enough, like not like $100 million, anything like this, just something small like 100K or 300K or some lower number, then the opportunity for some sort of reorg of the mempool becomes just not economically feasible, or just doesn't make sense to do it in some sense. But theoretically, if you did all this stuff, then you could do a Bitcoin to ETH swap in very short period of time, especially if you have order books done and you got rapid swaps, just to confuse another type of swap in this instant, regular, streaming, rapid, whatever. There's so many phrases now. But like if you apply that, you could even get a Bitcoin ETH swap done within, I don't know, 20 seconds. Right, and your Ether is sent to your ETH wallet within 20 seconds, which is such a crazy notion to think that you could do an entire on-chain swap in such a short period of time. That gives you like a Web 2 experience in some sense, or a centralized exchange experience. And they're not even dealing with layer 1; they're just like swapping within their own internal servers. It's pretty amazing to think about. You can get competitive experience and swap times even with layer 1s. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it is funny. I do note your sentiment on there being so many different, or I guess, types of swap now, or different names for features on THORChain. But I think it's necessary. But we still have to remember that almost everyone is going to be coming through the front door of THORChain through what appears to them as a regular swap. And so for a while we were like, oh, do streaming swaps, are they the same as just like a, y equals x times k swap through the pool? Like, it has this, time dimensionality aspect that might be too confusing. But what we found is that like the arbitrage on THORChain is so good and so fast with synths and soon to be 2 times better with trade accounts that like the price execution spread on a streaming swap is almost like it's you can't tell the difference. You can't really tell as a user that your swap is actually taking place over X number of blocks. So I think like as like the tooling and as the features get better, like most people don't even need to know about streaming swaps now. Likewise, I don't think most order users are going to use order books personally from a front end. I still think that like the 99% of people that use THORChain are just going to be like, hitting a swap on like a very simple wallet or, swap widget type UI. And then under the hood, it's streaming and then people are filling them with order books and trade accounts. Like there's going to be a number of these different like sort of like almost like pro mode type swaps happening under the hood to fill those users swaps, like because like that, like when a user goes to their wallet to swap, like that's like organic demand, like that's price discovery happening on THORChain. And then there's just a ton of like arbitrage and stuff that happens underneath the hood where like it essentially like to your point execute instantly as an instant swap by way of just basically sourcing liquidity from the order books, which are also built on trade accounts, but trade accounts are simultaneously rebalancing the AMM pool. So like THORChain is really evolving to be like a really, really, really like complex beast under the hood, but it still has this really like shiny, excellent user interface for most swappers at the front door. And I think that's like it's like the iceberg model. You want the thing that most people see to just basically be like small and simple, but then the actual power users, the market makers, the liquidity providers have a suite of tools underneath the surface to make it all happen.
I'd actually would disagree. I agree with almost everything you said there, with the exception of I actually think limit orders will surpass like streaming swaps or like regular swaps within probably 30 days, maybe 60. We'll actually see more volume passing to the network through limit orders than non-limit orders fairly quickly, mostly because of arbitrage. And then we'll probably see limit orders surpass any on organic volume at some point, maybe a little bit longer. Maybe let's call it 3 to 6 months. And the reason why I say
I talk about orders placed or orders filled.
Orders filled, I would say. The reason why I say that is because in crypto in general, like limit orders are king. Like the amount of volume passing through limit orders today was it 20 or 50x more than like swaps, like AMM swaps, whatever. And that's just because that's where all the capital is. Like the people who really have capital, who really do volume, are like traders, and traders don't use swaps. Traders use limit orders because they need more advanced tools to accomplish the goals they're trying to accomplish. And we're just not tapped into the majority of volume of this industry, of the spot trading in this industry. We're just only tapped into a relatively small percentage of it. Limit orders kind of flips that a little bit. It requires UIs to be built, which there's already several UIs. We're very excited about this thing. I think Shape's just one of them, THORSup's another one. There's lots of them who really don't want to do it, and they're going to build really kind of more advanced UIs that have, trading view and other, fucking like more advanced UIs to do what they're doing. And I think that especially with like trade accounts making it even cheaper to give you like exactly a sex experience, but completely decentralized, like in terms of fees and all those things, like we're still going to be competitive against a Binance or a Coinbase that does tens of billions of dollars per day in volume, mostly through trade accounts. Sorry, mostly from limit orders and whatnot. So like there's a good chance it won't be fast in terms of that kind of adoption. It'll be a slow thing. It'll take months and months, maybe even a year or two. But like in my opinion, like limit orders will shift the game for us very significantly to expanding the amount of liquidity that is available to us. A lot of market is available to us to be significantly more, and we will get huge amount of volume from the other players, just because it's automated, it's open, it's transparent. There's less risk at hand because it's transparent, because it's like what's happening. Where there's centralized exchanges die all the fucking time because it's just a big giant black box in the background. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong about this, and I'd be happy if I was right, and I'd be sad if I wasn't. But I really do think that limit orders is gonna change the game over a longer period of time. In the first 30 days, it'll surpass regular swaps, just mainly because of arbitrage, and then organic volume will take probably 6 months, maybe up to 2 years to see that be overtaking limit orders.
Pluto, I
I
really liked
hope.
what you said though about just like that the average user coming into a wallet and just like making a swap, and it's just the best, cleanest UX. Like with confirmation count skipping, like this potential of being able to put up a bond at stake and being able to bypass confirmation counts for smaller trades, and also being able to bond into a swapper clout to increase the clout of your users to get them out quicker. Being able to just swap cross chain, especially like Bitcoin to ETH, Bitcoin to stables in just like a couple seconds or a minute, is it's going to be pretty insane to see just like the real level up of user experience. Because right now we have all these delays for security, but like being able to scale that up where 90% of users get to just experience the instant in and out, it's going to be a pretty big game changer for just like how usable the product is for almost everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, totally. Anything that we can do to drive more volume is absolutely a plus. I think that we, as the people who are having conversations with wallets most frequently, um, are always going to be like looking at like our bread and butter. And right now, the bread and butter is people making swaps through things like Trust Wallet, THORSwap. I'm excited, and I would probably take that bet, Chad. That I think you mentioned like within a month, you think it'll eclipse just like AMM swap volume. I'd probably take that bet if it were me. But like I think anything that we can be doing to stimulate more swap volume through THORChain's pools is obviously a plus and something that I'm on board with. So I think it's like it's like we win either way in that
But
situation.
here's how I can not prove, but close to prove to you why I think that's going to be true. The vast majority of trade volume on THORChain is arbitrage. At the very minimum, it's 50%, and that assumes if there's no actual price changes in the market, everything's like stable for one day. Arbitrage volume will be about 50%, right? Because it's just arbitraging organic volume is passing through. The minute that there's like volatility in the prices of any asset, you start to see arbitrage acting at that point, and you surpass 50%. You're now at 60%, 7%, 80%, depending upon volatility of the market. And any arbitrage bot who is not arbing via limit orders will lose. Like they will not be as efficient. They will not be as well. And so any one arbitrage bot that's using limit orders to arbitrage these swaps or trades or whatever is just going to winnow everybody who's doing kind of like the way we're doing it today. So this naturally creates a lot of pressure for every arbitrage bot to upgrade to this methodology because it's faster, efficient, and it's competitive. If you don't do it, you're not going to make any money, right? It's almost as clean as that. So there's going to be a lot of pressure, especially in that first month, if anybody's running an RBot to utilize limit orders, and that's going to be a vast majority of the trade volume fairly quickly. That's why I say 30 days. That's going to be more commonly used than swaps.
The one thing you have
And
going against you, Chad, though, is that trade assets are twice as capital efficient as cents today, which means it would take, I guess, half of the volume uh, to actually arb the same amount back. So if you're doing it, like, yes, they're more efficient, but if they need less capital to rebalance prices, then you might end up doing less volume overall. So
Yeah,
it might be a good bet for Pluto.
but even what I just said, that includes that. It includes trade assets, right? Because an arb, if there's no volatility in the prices, if somebody trades $100 in one direction, a trade asset arbitrage bot will trade $100 in the reverse direction, almost 1-to-1. Not quite like 1-to-1, but fairly close, right? And so that's where you get the 50 ratio between arbs and organics. That's assuming no price volatility at all. As soon as there's price volatility, it goes beyond 50%. It goes to 60% or 70%, even 90%, depending upon, market volatility.
I would just push back again though. Can someone pull the data on right now the amount of synth swaps like versus L1 swaps? Because I actually think that L1 swaps are more than the ARBs swaps at this point in time already. I also like I've run a market maker shop before, like, and done stuff with ARB, and it's not as easy as you think. Like people don't place limit orders as arbitrage. Arbitrage is always taking from one exchange and then basically taking a spread and then providing liquidity on providing that liquidity on another venue. They're not you can't simply mirror the order book on Binance, because if everyone mirrors the order book on Binance, they're basically only getting partially filled. So I don't think that like I don't think that limit orders is the most effective way to do ARB. But I think all of that remains to be seen. But just my intuition says that like thinks that like order books is going to be far more useful for people who just want to like set it and forget it and like get their order filled at like a certain price, at a certain price target. Like traders will use it, but I don't actually think that ARBs are going to use it as much. But that's just my intuition.
I'm curious if I see Tyler Reynolds is in the audience, if he's interested in coming on stage and giving his viewpoints. So he knows probably more about this topic than I do, or probably that Pluto does. So I'd be curious if he has a viewpoint on this, if you want to come up and talk or not. Or he doesn't have to, of course, but I'd be curious.
Yeah, why don't we open it up for questions now?
Yeah.
If anyone wants
let me get
to
some
raise
people up.
Yeah.
Creepy Capital's been waiting for a while, so let's let him speak first. What's up?
What's up, guys? Exciting day. So I originally wanted to speak just back when you guys first started talking about how, Chad, I think you were saying how if everyone knew about this, the caps would be hit like today. And I know that, it's kind of grassroots, word of mouth, whatever growth on THORChain, but I mean, is there any plan on kind of implementing some sort of marketing budget or strategy to really get the word out? Because I do feel like you're right, and that it's just shocking how, in a sense, unknown everything is, especially with what's going on right now with lending.
There's no specific marketing plan. I think the marketing plan in my mind is just that the various UIs are the marketing. So Shapeshift and Lens and THORSwap, like they're trying to get more users on their platforms for obvious reasons, and so they become the marketing methodology rather than the core protocol itself.
So behind the scenes type, in a sense, THORChain just being the rails that no one really sees like that. I get that. I mean, why is that in your opinion, or is there an explanation for why that's not working well yet? Is it just too early, or like why is that not metastasizing into like more virality?
I mean, you could make a lot of arguments about this. To be honest, I don't really care so much at this point in time about that, just because at this point we're still in our approving phase, and it's just obviously we have the caps on there for a good reason, and we're trying to start small and learn from it and observe the data and to either confirm or reject our kind of notions that we started with. So far, it's been like almost entirely green flags so far, but it's obviously still early, so there's still more time to wait, But for right now, we're getting the usage we want to get for the most part. I'm just trying to test out the idea. Downstream, when we want to, like, if we ever decide to go balls out on this thing, if the community wants to go that direction, then we could probably rethink things at that point in time. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see a strong need to push the marketing quite so much, outside of just some tweets and spaces and simple stuff like that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I guess the only other thing that I was wanting to talk about or bring up is I've seen, and I'm not sure how much is legit or just FUD, but is it concerning that there are, I think I've seen some Thor infobot or whatever posting of some seemingly big nodes that are, I guess, getting out or unchurning and kind of dissociating with the platform? I mean, are you guys concerned about that at all, or is that just a function of those people that are doing that just didn't like the direction that THORChain's going, and at this point they're just saying fuck it, we're out, and moving on, and that's done? Or do you think that's something that's going to keep happening? Because I think that was really what was putting a lid on the price more than likely. It seemed like there was a lot of big nodes or whatever that were kind of unloading, and it's a little bit concerning just to just seeing that's a little bit like, whoa, like why are these whales nodes that have been in, they put a huge investment in and a lot of their time and effort and energy and money, and they're like just getting out? Like, that's kind of scary. So what do you guys think about that?
To be honest, I barely even noticed. We still had 104 nodes, and today we have 102. You're gonna naturally see some nodes coming and going for various reasons, and we can speculate what those reasons might be, but obviously we don't really know unless they kind of like let us know via like a relay command or whatever. But I'm not, honestly, we're not seeing large nodes like leave or anything like this. The number of nodes who voted no on lending is very, very small, like 1 or 2, I think it was, or 3 maybe. So I'm not too concerned about it personally.
All right, fair enough. Thanks, guys.
I would just add one thing to that is, like, if you think about like the history of RUNE, I mean, over the last 3 years and the last 6 months, basically, RUNE's done like a 6x. So it's natural for people to do, take some profits, do some rotations. So it's, you see this in every large project. People come and go, and I don't think it's a thing that should be concerning to anyone, really.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I follow.
Well, while we have Tyler, it was nice to jump on here. I'll be interested to get his thoughts of how he feels about what we were talking about earlier before we go on to another topic.
Yeah, I actually just joined a couple minutes before I heard my name, so I'm not sure I have the full context. In general, I responding to Creamy Capital's question, I think the reason that lending is not better known in the space is just because it's being farmed out to these UIs that are less known. As Chad said, I don't particularly find it concerning that lending has not sort of made as much publicity waves for THORChain as one might expect, and I think that's going to resolve just because the lending conditions are so just insanely favorable to borrowers. So having no liquidations, having no funding fees is just wild in a world where, if you look at these perps platforms, the funding rate on ETH or on Bitcoin is routinely above 40%. So I think that the message just needs to get out there. There's a lot of code risk as well, or at least I should say perceived code risk. And the only thing that's going to defray those concerns is time in the market. So I don't find anything problematic about what I've seen so far, despite some of my other concerns regarding the reflexive nature of lending that is going to cause, presumably, the price to rise quite a bit, but has some concerns on the way down.
Yeah, thanks for that input. I think I generally agree with what Tyler was just saying. So Tyler, the question I want to ask you, because you know this area much better than I do, is we're about to launch, limit orders on THORChain probably in the next few months, maybe April, maybe not April, probably after that. But the debate is like, what would be more utilized on THORChain? Would it be like swaps as it is today, or would it be limit orders? And I'm curious if you have any viewpoints of what would kind of drive more volume in the protocol, swaps or like limit orders?
I got a viewpoint.
Go ahead, Art.
Yeah, basically, you guys can like decipher what you want about all this, but the fact of the matter is that the only ecosystem that's creating anything sustainable is the pork and pond ecosystem. And it's breaking the mold.
Sorry about that. All right, thanks, Tyler.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
So regarding swaps versus limit orders, I think it's really going to depend on what we see sort of the user base end up being, right? To the extent that it's mostly retail users, integrating through, trading through, XDeFi and these other wallets, I would expect swaps will remain extremely popular. I just don't know. I've never actually looked into the ratio between ARB activity versus natural activity. So I just don't know how active the limit orders are going to be, but it's going to be one of those things where the number of users are going to continue to use swaps way more, but the volume of dollars is presumably going to be primarily limit orders. So that would sort of be my guess over the next 12 months or so.
Cool. Let me ask you a random question, because I'd be interested to get your viewpoint. Like, what do you feel the limit of how long a limit order can or should be opened on THORChain? Like, should we set like a 3-day limit? Like, you can put open a limit order, and then if it doesn't get executed within 3 days, and it basically gets canceled. Like, do you have any viewpoints on this? Do you think it's shorter is better, longer is better? What would you expect?
I think that letting a market maker have some type of time in effect thing that you sort of see with other platforms, and especially other perps platforms, is good. Just not having some type of auto expiring thing is probably better. But there are obviously lots of costs, and there are technical trade-offs that I can't really comment on about what is the we'll call it weight of keeping really old bids and sell orders on the books. But it's adding liquidity one way or the other. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Is there a reason why you would want to expire them? I know Kraken, for example, I think this was in 2020 or so, decided to clear out all of its limit orders older than 6 months. And I forget, they gave a reason at the time, but I've now forgotten what that reason is.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like the Binance decks back in the day had like a 3-day expiry, and I think it's part of like, I think in some cases it just depends on your design. Like, if you have too many limit orders, if you've got like 1 million limit orders open, it becomes more expensive to like be checking them all, whatever. In our particular case, that's not the case, because of the kind of like the design that I put together for limit orders. You could have 1 million or 10 million limit orders open, and it doesn't really matter in terms of performance. What matters is the number of pairs. The more pairs, the more expensive it gets. But I think part of it for us is like, at least my initial thinking, which is not solid quite yet, but my initial thinking is that like, we don't want people to park assets on here for long periods of time. This is not a parking lot. We want active capital. So if you're going to do like a buy order of Bitcoin, when it hits $10,000 or something like this, then that's just becomes like a parking limit order in some sense, and that's probably just not good utilization of the security of this network, because we still have to secure that limit order that'll probably never get fulfilled, right? And so we don't want to just have capital just sitting around here doing nothing and then taking up space of our security and that kind of thing. So having an expiry means that you probably won't put a purchase order of Bitcoin for $10,000 on THORChain, because it's probably not going to hit $10,000 in the next 3 days or 1 month or whatever the time span is.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point. And I was wondering, what is the implications on security, and you answered it. So yeah, I think expiring, I'd probably give it a week. This is not based on any type of math, but and again, you'd have to consider much more. Like, I guess there's a question of what percent of orders do you feel just what percent of orders do you want sort of being dead weight, but providing, let's say, emergency liquidity? Again, like if we look at a different Kraken example, one of the ways that a hacker really stole a ton of funds from Kraken, it was they hacked in some couple of accounts. They basically tanked the price of Bitcoin against the Canadian dollar, which was a very illiquid market. And I don't think, and then through that account, they were able to withdraw lots and lots of Bitcoin. And I don't think that actually, as long as the ARB activity is really good, I don't see that really affecting THORChain just because every asset is paired to RUNE. So I think it really does just come down to economic security. And, eventually someday, presumably options will be added. And I think that is a much lighter weight way for people to, sort of put in these stink bids. Or, I wonder if there's a different thing that could be built off chain that then would let someone, immediately submit an order to buy if Bitcoin were to fall down to, 10,000 or something like that. And then just have those monitoring software, be off chain.
Yeah, that makes
Can I just get a word? Can I just get a word real
sure.
quick? So the thing is with liquidity pools, any dollar of assets that's being secured in a liquidity pool is actively contributing to the protocol. It's making price execution for all swaps better, and it's driving demand to the Rune asset when assets are held in actual liquidity pools. When it's held in an order book, that's basically just free security for the end user who's placing the limit order. So they don't pay anything to basically take up or expend security budget, and they're not actively contributing to making price execution better. They could be if their order gets filled, then it's a good thing. But I think that all we have to do is ensure that most of the orders that are being placed on THORChain are getting filled, and if that's the case, then it more or less is the same as pooled liquidity. But pooled liquidity will still always be preferable in terms of the security budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think trade assets that are not sitting in a limit order are probably just obviously not contributing to the protocol very much. But trade assets sitting in a limit order that's reasonably executable, within a reasonable amount of time, and which is, which makes.
I would like to see like some sort of score, essentially, like it's a product of like standard deviations from the spot price times that is like goes into some function and basically says how much time it can spend in the pool, and the closer the expiry is related to the distance from the spot price. So things that are closer to the spot price are naturally more likely to get filled. So you don't even really need an expiry on it. You really only need to expire things. You don't even need an expiry if it's likely to get filled. It's those swaps that are further from the spot price that are less likely to get filled. So I think they both kind of work in the same way. But I think either using the price or just like some fixed expiry. But I think price is a better heuristic for, like you said, fillable or likely to get filled,
Right.
rather than just like some arbitrary point in time.
Yeah, that's a logical viewpoint. Like we can probably do something like that where the expiry is relative to the price.
And that's what we see on most order books too. Like the most depth is close to the spot price. I think that's how. So I think it could be self-policing, and I think all we need to do is think it through, and have some mechanism where people just aren't really encouraged to place things 50% away from the spot price.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. Tyler, one more question for you, because I got your a minute of your time. Is there any type of like order book item types, or like types of, like, we're doing limit orders to start? We could do stop orders, stop limits. We could do, a plethora of different other types of order book like strategies. Is there any ones that you feel, other than limit orders, it would be a really valuable add to the protocol?
I think stop loss and take profit are probably the two next obvious things to add. But I don't I don't think that that's going to be the difference like out of the gate. I think it's just getting people comfortable with the code risk, and you have 3 months, 6 months time to add these specific features on.
Yeah, I don't think I'd add those ones on day one. I think limit orders, but I think I did research a while back, and so something like 80 or 90% of order books are limit orders, and it's a very small percentage that use stop loss or stop limits, or or even market orders, which is basically what a swap is today, is basically a market order in a matter of speaking. And so there's just not that much usage of those strategies, but I'm wondering if those are kind of needed in order to garner more support or garner more activity, on THORChain.
I didn't think so. And actually, one of the things I was actually thinking about right now was it may even be less relevant, because if you have someone in the THORChain ecosystem, and let's say that they are leveraging up using THORChain lending, there's, they're not necessarily worried about their position going negative because there's no liquidation.
Right.
So, and the other thing too is because we're not trading a bunch of meme coins and extremely volatile coins. We stop losses sort of have less of an impact on. I would just they just have less of they're less of a bonus to the types of people that would be trading on THORChain in the first place, I think. I think it's like, again, I'm not a market maker, but I do think it'd be really interesting to hear out from a market maker, what is their number one thing? Because my concern would be, what does it cost them to put a limit order on the books? That's the thing that I would imagine would actually hurt adoption more than anything else.
Yeah, I think initially when we talked about order books a while back, we were talking to a large market making firm, and I won't name which one, but and I think one of the concerns that we were talking about back then, I think Pluto will probably remember this, is that in order to do a limit order, you had to use cents. In order to use cents, you got to swap to a cent, which pays fees to do so. Especially if that was pre-streaming too, so it may have been quite expensive, which would have been a limiting factor for someone like a large market making firm who's used to a Coinbase experience or a Binance experience where fees are kind of like lesser in that case. But now that we have trade accounts instead of synthetics, there's no fees to either deposit or withdrawal, similar to what a SEX or a DEX. A SEX is like today, and you're only going to pay a transaction fee, which is, I don't know, was it 20 cents? I think it is, to be able to
20 cents
to make an order or several orders, or update several orders. I think you'll be able to batch it and say, oh, these 12 orders that I have in a 120-cent transaction, update them all to be this price or that price or this order detail thing, whatever hell it is. I think that's pretty much the fees that we'd be looking at.
And do you know how easy it is for a market maker to take their existing, engines and port it over to THORChain? Because obviously, the thing you just described is presumably not something they have to deal with on existing sexes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that an existing sex would have like an API key where you would just post some JSON to some endpoint and then to update your positions. Here, it's instead of doing that, you're signing a transaction and broadcasting it to the chain, which case it gets executed within probably around 5 seconds or so, 5 or 6 seconds. Whereas on the sex, you push that thing out and it would probably update within a second, right? So you get faster execution time, which maybe that 4 seconds is significant. Maybe it's not. I don't really know, to be honest with you. And maybe I don't know if that 20-cent thing is significant either. I don't know how frequently they update the position. Is it every second or every
a ton? Yeah, that's the thing, is they update it a ton because they want to be the one capturing the fee, capturing the spread. So they have to update that price. And I was just sort of sitting there going, if they have to pay 20 cents every time they update an order, that's one thing. But then to do an optimization of batching, as many transactions as they can to only pay one 20-cent fee, I'm just sitting there going, hey, it's really about lowering their barriers, their being the market makers, barrier of entry of bringing their liquidity on. And, ultimately you have to reward whoever those first people are with really juicy, first mover advantages.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm looking at it is they'll just do one transaction per block at most. So that's 20 seconds. Sorry, 5 to 6 seconds. 20 cents every 5 to 6 seconds. Which, if you add that up throughout the day, it's not going to be that much money.
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about the
cost to refactor their infrastructure to utilize this system
exactly.
Versus and it's a fair point to make.
So for me, I would guess that you would see more ROI on your dev time looking at that question rather than adding stop losses or something like that.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, I'll. That's a difficult problem to solve, but I'll think it over with the team.
What do you think about the native Rune transaction fee? So it's set at 20 cents right now, but that's just an arbitrary number that was just picked. I don't even know what methodology was used to pick that 20 cent number. I'm wondering if you guys have thoughts about just like where that could go, because we could subsidize that in other ways through like L1 outbound fees, which are if they're not already set to $1, they're going to be set to $1. Like whether we should try and move that down to encourage people to use order books and to make it more efficient, or whether we should just keep it the same and just see what happens, see what people's feedback is first. But right now it's I think 20 cents per
To be
transaction.
honest, like if we KYC, not as in like me KYC, but if we say like, oh, here's this large market making firm, they want to participate, and we take a vote in the community and say, hey, let's whitelist this specific Thor address. We all know that that's some large market making firm, whatever the hell it is. I'm okay with waiving the 20 cents just because they're not going to attack us per se, and if they do, we just de-whitelist them with another vote and carry on. It's not that big of a deal. If the 20 cents itself becomes a problem, I think that's relatively easy to get around. I think Tyler's got a good point about it's not just about the cost of it, but also just the ease of integration.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess if you can do it every block, if you could batch them per block anyway, then it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But maybe even like a similar concept to the instant swaps could be like applied there, where you could just bond in and get cheaper swaps or something like that somehow, but have a slashable bond. But like, I guess you're right. It really just depends on where the demand is and like what the market's saying about order books.
Yeah, you could do it that way, where like you bond up some amount of Rune, and if you do more than 5 transactions per block, you start to deduct 20 cents. But if you're under that, then it's free, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm just brainstorming here, but
yeah, that can make sense. Yeah, for sure.
Just spitballing, but possibly something like this, just to make it cheaper for. We want to have large market makers on here, right? I mean, that's obviously would be very beneficial. The amount of volume we would get from them would be fantastic. So, whatever we can do to incentivize that would be obviously beneficial for the protocol.
Oh, let's get to some of the other people who came up here. Rune, what's up?
Yeah, hello guys. Yeah, I wanted to know if there is actually ETA on the when the other books limit August are gonna come in.
Right now, we're focusing on trade accounts and spending some time with that to verify that trade accounts itself works before we move on to order books. But trade accounts is the next thing, and memless transactions is probably going to follow that. So I hope memless would come out sometime in April, late April, maybe May. And then after that, we'll probably do order books. So hopefully in Q2, like end of Q2, would be my best guess of when order books could hit.
Okay, all right, okay.
Filu. Hey. Filu 84. Either. Maybe not. A couple other people requesting. Let me bring them up.
What about you, Airdanis? You got anything you wanted to bring up?
Thor dude, what's up?
I don't know if you guys went over this earlier or not, but I'm just looking for an update if there's anything about the Solana potential integration or.
Who do you want to take this one?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Solana's like, it's going to be a huge lift. I mean, we're making progress on it, like but it has multiple dependencies all the way down to like the cryptography that THORChain operates on. So It's obviously super important to get that stuff right. Like, it's not like any other chain integration. So yeah, it's going to take a while, to be honest. I don't feel comfortable giving any ETAs on it really. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's some like, not like disagreement, but just like, we're constantly trying to like weigh the importance of different things that require like Herculean effort to land between decentralized teams, auditors, security teams, developers, UIs. Like, everyone has their own opinion about what the most important thing that we should work on at THORChain is. But yeah, I mean, I think that the consensus, at least in like the dev team at the moment, is that there are more important things to work on now that will actually move the needle considerably in terms of the protocols metrics, like volume, liquidity. So like those are obviously the most important things to us. Like, I don't think that we're going to see. I think one thing that I think I would be able to agree on with Chad, like we may disagree that like the point to which order books is going to like double or triple the volume. But I can safely say that order books would drive more volume to the network than the Solana integration probably. So therefore, it just seems likely that it just seems more logical that that's something that we should all focus our time on. And it seems there's a lot of juice behind that in the community right now. We're not going to stop working on it, but it's just not as important, as I had thought. And frankly, I was probably the one pushing for it the hardest, but the community and some of the other devs, I've just basically said like, hey, look, there's other priorities, and when we assess all of them together, I tend to agree. So yeah, I mean, it's not like on the back burner, but it's definitely not the top priority right now.
Yeah, the way that I would kind of phrase that is that, in my opinion, adding Solana would probably be, and I think Pluto would agree with me on this, would probably be the most technically difficult and thing that we've done on the project since mainnet launch, or since MCCN more accurately. Like, the amount of time, engineering time that's going to do that is quite intense. And it's also quite intense on our node operators, because like many of them are running on bare metal at this point, and probably all of them don't have enough resources to support a Solana node with 1 TB of RAM, or what the hell the ridiculous requirements are for infra is. And so it would take our operators themselves probably on the fast end a month, on the slow end 3 months, just to get their infrastructure ready for such a significant increase in cost of operation. And to do this kind of very expensive thing for us devs, and the expensive thing for node operators, and the expensive thing of actually trying to maintain that chain after we've been launched, and dealing with all their outages and their instability issues and all this kind of stuff, it's just going to be absorbently expensive. And that's okay, as long as the ROI is there. And I think that's kind of debatable whether or not the ROI is there, right? Whereas something like order books, for example, order books is already coded, and it's actually already in the code base today. There's some tweaks to be made to like allow, like, it integrates streaming swaps in order books, and to use trade accounts instead of synths. There's some tweaks to be made, and there's some unit tests to be written, or rather regression tests to be written, which didn't exist at the time we wrote that code. So there's not it's not really a heavy lift to add order books, but it could have significant effects in the value of the protocol. So like, that's kind of the way that I like to think about things, is just like, I look at 3 kind of axes of how much risk is there, how much of a lift this thing is in cost to this thing, and then what is the ROI, like how much benefit does the protocol get from adding this new thing. And looking at those 3 kind of axes, that's how I kind of govern the way that I think about priorities at a high level. And for me, and I think Pluto's agreeing, from what I understand from, is that something like order books or memoless, it's a much lower lift than Solana, and offers probably more value to the protocol in terms of like volume and activity and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Thor Duty has a question.
Hey, what's up, fellas? I just had a question about the Ledger integration. Have you heard anything back from those guys. I'm working out. Sorry if I'm breathing in the mic all hard. But yeah, thanks a lot.
I can take this one. So definitely can't comment on anything, like, not ready to make any official statements. We're in very close contact with the Ledger team, and should be able to announce some things soon. But as of right now, soon TM, can't say anything else.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Absolute Chad calling in from the gym. I hope you're PRing right now as we speak.
Oh yeah, dude, I can hardly breathe and talk at the same time.
but it goes without saying that like all of us are very excited about a ledger integration, a more native ledger integration that we already have now. And obviously, like, we've been in contact with them for a long period of time. Iridanis has been doing a lot of that work. Kyle has been doing a lot of that work. And I really kind of thank those guys and the rest of the team for all the hard work. It's been, definitely not an easy task by any stretch. And a lot of people are putting a lot of time and effort into this thing and trying to move it along the best we can. But obviously, we can't guarantee that's even happening at all, or a time frame, or any of these things until, until we get further down the process.
All right, let's let Finn Blue up here, and then we'll call it. What's up? Finn, what's good?
Bluey, 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 bluey,
You there?
bluey, 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 bluey.
Guys, sorry about that.
Someone just briefed out Chad.
I've been feeling pretty euphoric the past couple weeks, as I imagine some of you guys are as well. If you can't tell by my retarded tweets that I post sometimes, but just curious, just to throw a little cold water on things. I've had a couple times in the past, and maybe Pluto as well. I'm not entirely sure who. On doing a couple things to make the overall protocol safer in times of downturn, and who knows when that might come. But the two things in particular that I think I've heard you mention are either forced ejection or negative interest rates on the saver side, and then on the lending side, it was basically at times when lending health is not great, that the collateral redemptions would not be at 100%. They would be at something less than that. Just curious if either of those are gaining any traction, and what the thought is, if there's any evolution of any of those thoughts.
No. I think we basically decided that like these spaces are not the best venue for airing our disagreements about the different mechanics, because really there's only like a handful of people who are even like qualified to comment on the tokenomics of THORChain. It is extremely complex, and it's really just a subject. Like, if you're interested in it, join the developer Discord and get involved in the conversation there. But I think we've kind of like beat that dead horse a little bit too much in a public venue, to the point that it's like just not really productive. Like, the layman will come along and be like, "Oh, devs don't agree. Like, this is bad." In fact, it's one of the best things you can have in a protocol, is a healthy disagreement between contributors. But people just don't see it that way. So for my personally, from my point of view, like, I'm pretty much just like done talking about that kind of stuff on here. We could do another space like once something is actually proposed, but until there's actually like solid proposal on the table, like there's really no point in discussing it, in my opinion. And it's been discussed ad nauseum in this venue and others. So I don't know. I'd rather just keep it positive, focus on the things that that are immediately in front of us, and all the killer new features that will be dropping soon.
Well, I thought like a lot of these things, there wasn't that much disagreement. I mean, maybe there's some disagreement on the method of achieving the goal, but we all agree on the goal of what we're trying to achieve. I think that's true, right?
Yep.
Which is basically just trying to create, backstops in one form or another to better protect the network in a downturn. I think we all agree on that. I don't think there's much disagreement on that. It's just a question of how to get there. I think for me personally, like I'm kind of starting to come around towards forced ejections in some ways. And I've been thinking about this, and I've been chatting with Lena about it as well over the last like week or so. And I might be coming around to a forced ejections mentality of like how to deal with savers. Derived assets, I still kind of feel about haircuts. I think that's probably still the correct way to go. But ideally, you don't have haircuts at all on derived assets in the long term. The short term, it makes sense just to protect the network in a downturn, blah, 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 so that things do go south. They don't go as south as we want them to go. But if we get confirmation from the market in the next bear market that, lending works as well as I hope that it works, then we probably can get rid of the haircut at that point, in my opinion. And people will debate that probably in a few years, but yeah, I still think for more importantly right now, I care less about derived assets and haircuts. Like it's such a small market cap of derived assets doesn't really matter that much at this point in time. But what's more important to me is making sure we get that synth kind of backstop going in one form or other. And I'd like to see that done, sooner than later, just for safety's sake.
Yeah, and I think that's targeted for version 130, the synth backstop. So we'll come out with some more information about that once we get it finalized and landed.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, it's one of the kind of comical things about this community is how different I see the risk of THORFi, like the individual things, than the rest of the community. Like, to me, Savers is probably the most risky THORFi feature we have, but I would argue a good amount. But that one poses more risk to the protocol than our kind of algo stable / index stable. It's more riskier than lending, to be honest with you, by a good margin. So getting that one under control is more important to me than lending or even Tor. Because Savers is really where the majority of THORFi risk is, and that's the one that I'm most concerned about. The other ones, not nearly as much.
Facts.
Cool. Yeah, we'll come back to that when we have something solid, probably in like the next month or so for 130. And why 130? That's going to be the one with memoless transactions, right? So probably coming sometime early April, I would think.
Yep.
Word.
And then, yeah, just one final reminder to everyone listening: if you are on, you have LP on BNB Beacon Chain, you have savers on BNB Beacon Chain. If you have any liquidity with an address starting BNB, again, this does not apply to Binance Smart Chain with addresses starting 0x. But now is the last chance to withdraw before that is Ragnaroked. So essentially meaning you will the network will withdraw on your behalf back to the wallet you used to provide that liquidity. Last chance to get that done. Everything is up and running on BNB Beacon Chain. So yeah, this is the last warning. We're going to have all the UIs do a final push. And then sometime next week, we'll start that forcible withdrawal process.
And if you have liquidity, withdraw manually. Don't wait for the automatic withdrawal. It's not like if there's some kind of issue with the Ragnarok, then your funds could be just abandoned. You might not get them back. So if you have funds there, then don't wait for the Ragnarok. Withdraw whenever you can. Sweet, guys. Well, thanks for coming out. We'll see you all next week. Peace.
Later.
Later, guys.